And we are live on YouTube today as well. So welcome to our audience who is watching on Zoom, and welcome to everyone watching on YouTube. We are so happy to have you.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome.
Okay, so let's get started. Without further ado, welcome to Family Law Now After Hours. Today's topic is, can we really get divorced collaboratively? Or in other words, can we really get divorced without going to court? Our panel is going to explain what collaborative divorce is, how it works, and whether it could be the right option for your situation. In Ontario, collaborative divorce offers couples a respectful and cooperative way to resolve issues without stepping foot in a courtroom. As always, please use the Q&A feature to submit your general comments or questions about the topic, and our panel will do their best to answer them throughout this webinar. Any specific questions about the details of your family law matter, please contact our team directly. We would be happy to assist. And the purpose of this series is to discuss general legal information on separation, divorce, and family law matters. Any information provided here should not be construed as legal advice. Please do stay tuned until the end, as we will be sharing how you can schedule a free initial consultation with one of our lawyers. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Anna and Lisa. Anna is a compassionate and strategic family lawyer who takes a client-centered approach to every matter. She helps clients feel supported and empowered while navigating the emotional realities of family law. With strong communication skills and a collaborative mindset, Anna develops practical, tailored solutions that reflect her clients' goals. She is recognized for offering clear, creative guidance in moments of uncertainty, enabling clients to make confident and informed decisions. Anna holds a Master of Laws from the University of Law in London and a Bachelor of Laws from the University of Sussex, grounding her practice in both advocacy and empathy. Thank you so much for joining us today, Anna.
Thanks for that introduction.
And we also have Lisa Clark. Lisa is a senior law clerk with over 16 years of experience in family law and joined Russell Alexander in June of 2025. Lisa graduated from the law clerk program at Fleming College in 2009 and has developed a well-rounded understanding of the complexities of family breakdown. She is a member in good standing with the Institute of Law Clerks of Ontario and recently received her designation as an ILCO certified expert in family law. Raised in Kawartha Lakes and now settled in Peterborough, Lisa enjoys photography, reading, online gaming, and spending time with her cats. Thank you so much for joining us as well, Lisa. And without further ado, I will now pass it over to you to get started with the presentation.
Thank you so much. All right, so as stated, we are here to talk about what exactly is collaborative law. So the short answer is that it's a respectful way to resolve your family law issues without going to court. You're gonna resolve these issues in a way that focuses on efficiency and cooperation. And you're also going to have the ability to have other professionals assist you in the matter. And so it's really important that both parties kind of have a shared commitment to the process. And that also means having full disclosure, not just of financial information, but of all information. And the focus with collaborative more just becomes more on creating like a safe and supportive environment for the parties to really discuss what their feelings are, what their goals are, and kind of like just foster that open communication. So the key features of collaborative is it is completely voluntary. You cannot be forced into doing collaborative law. Both parties need to be fully aware and open and willing to engage in the process. There also needs to be complete transparency. So you're going to have, like I said, full and honest disclosure of all relevant information, not just the financial. Because if this method fails, and you need to go to court, your collaborative lawyer cannot represent you. So that's why it's really important that if you're committing to like this process, that you're committing 100%. And it's collaborative law really prioritizes the issues that are important to the parties themselves. And it's also, I guess, the complete opposite of court. It's a non-adversarial approach, right? So in court, it often is like seen as a battleground or, but with the collaborative approach, you're really trying to do it in a respectful manner where you're working together on that. And I guess that kind of leads us into like the benefits of doing collaborative over a traditional like divorce process in the courts.
Definitely. I mean, I'd echo everything you said. I'd also add that collaborative isn't a shortcut, it's just a different mindset. So it's not like in court when you're trying to win against your spouse, but instead you're trying to build a future plan. And I think that shift can be really powerful. So there's many benefits to a collaborative divorce over a traditional divorce. One being costs. Litigation can drag on for years and the expenses pile up with every court appearance and motion. Collaborative tends to move faster because you're addressing the issues directly in meetings and not waiting months for court dates. Another one being control. So in court, a judge decides what happens to your children, your money, your property, and in collaborative, you and your spouse make those decisions. You know your family better than anyone else, so it makes sense that you be a part of those conversations. I think a third benefit could be relationship preservation. So, especially when there's children and you're going to be co-parenting for years, litigation can often sometimes worsen conflict, which can spill over into the parenting relationship, where collaborative divorce kind of creates and speaks to a more respectful practice and respectful communication. So, it doesn't ease conflict, but it helps people build skills that they can carry forward. And I've seen an emotional impact too. Clients can sometimes leave court feeling unheard or resentful. And in collaborative approaches, even if they compromise, they can still feel well respected. There's still a sense of dignity, then, and that's invaluable. So it can make this transition period in your life easier and feel a little bit more gentle. Another benefit could be flexibility. So court orders can be sometimes rigid, and in a collaborative environment, the agreement can be creative. So you're designing a parenting schedule around shift work or creating a financial agreement that balances short-term needs and long-term stability. So these creative solutions sometimes aren't possible in litigation, but can be part of the conversation in a more collaborative approach.
And another benefit, just adding on to that, is also it's also private because when you're in court, it is public. Anyone can look at your court documents, anyone can kind of see what's going on. Um, and you probably don't don't want your family history, relationship, all that kind of quote unquote dirty laundry being aired like that in the court process. So everything's staying kind of like within the family.
That's such a great point. And probably one that, a lot of people don't fully understand or consider before starting this process. Um, but maybe we can now transition, Lisa, into like, what are some of the roles of the collaborative professionals in this process?
Yeah, so we have, there's quite a few professionals who can be involved in the collaborative process. They don't all have to be. It all depends on the different circumstances. So of course, each party is going to have their collaboratively trained lawyer. So these are lawyers that have specific training in like the collaborative negotiation process. They're there to give you, your legal advice, guidance, support throughout the process. And then there could also be a financial professional. And especially if you have more complicated finances, like maybe you have a lot of assets, a lot of property, pensions, business valuations, that sort of thing. So they assist the parties with completing their, full financial disclosure, financial statements. And then they provide that information to the lawyers because they're the ones who are going to be deciding like what to do with that information.
Okay.
If there are children involved, you're likely going to have a parenting professional involved, which could just be a counselor of some sort or a social worker or even a psychologist. And the idea is that you would meet with them to voice like what your goals are for your parenting plan in the future. And also, sometimes depending on what their skills are and what their specialties are, they can actually meet with the children themselves to kind of get their views and preferences too, so that they can all be incorporated into a parenting plan that would then be attached to the final agreement.
Mm.
There are also other professionals that you could choose to be involved, like maybe you'll need real estate appraisers or life coaches or any other kind of like communication coaches, that kind of thing. Like the idea is really just to have everyone you need to work together to come to a resolution that makes everyone happy.
So it really seems like it's that team approach that makes collaborative practice so unique, right?
Absolutely.
Each professional is bringing their expertise, and that also kind of eases some of the pressure off lawyers who can then focus on more of the legal matters, and you have other people, in your corner helping. For example, a family coach can help manage parenting communication, so making sure that it's not the same old argument over and over, or that the conversation doesn't spiral. But how does the process itself get started?
So the first thing that a party wants to do collaborative law is you need to find a professional first, whether that be the lawyer, the family professional, or the financial professional. Typically, it will be the lawyer. So you meet with them, you choose that professional, you have your initial meeting. They're going to explain the process to you completely to make sure you're fully informed. And then they will, when both parties have retained their respective collaborative lawyers, and if any professionals are being retained, then everyone, including like everyone, will sign what's called a participation agreement. And basically, in that agreement, it's going to like identify the primary goals for the process. And also, you are promising not to go to court. You are literally putting in writing that you do not want to go to court and you are going to negotiate your issues collaboratively. And it's also in that participation agreement that states if the process fails and you do choose to go to court, you cannot use the lawyer that you used during the collaborative process. And you basically need to start from scratch. And no one wants to do that. So that's why when
Definitely
you're
not.
when you're entering the collaborative process, you are going in like 100% gung-ho because you do not want to go to court and you want to resolve these issues like as easily as you possibly can in this situation. So yeah, once you find your lawyer, both have retained your lawyers, you meet, you get your professionals, you sign your participation agreement, and then you start negotiations. And
Yeah.
then once you have your negotiations, you get a final, hopefully by the end, you'll have a final separation agreement that everyone is happy with.
So it seems like, even if you can't agree on everything, you have to at least agree on the fact that you're going to do this divorce amicably.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about preparing for these joint meetings and agreements. So I can kind of start off with this one. So I'd say that preparation is absolutely essential. It means gathering your documents. And Lisa, you kind of already touched on this, like your financial statements, your tax returns, everything's relevant for property and support. And so we're coming into the room to make sure that we're avoiding delays and that we're trusting that everyone's being open and honest in the process. But it's also about preparing emotionally for the process. Collaborative meetings aren't like court where your lawyer speaks for you. You're sat at the table. And you're having direct conversations as well. And it can be intimidating, but it also helps to reflect ahead of time and consider what are your priorities? How can I compromise on this? And what is the long-term vision I have? I encourage clients to kind of separate their must-haves from their nice-to-haves. And for example, maybe it's essential that your children stay at the same school. So whether you get a long weekend or not, you may be more flexible in that. And that's the difference between, what you're willing to kind of budge on and what you're not. So knowing the difference, I think, keeps the conversation really productive. And I think it's also important to remember that you're not going to solve everything in one meeting, right? This is kind of more of an open dialogue setting, and agreements are built step by step. So if you come prepared and open-minded and patient, you'll leave with progress.
Absolutely. I think that's really important. And I think it's, yeah, because you're building the agreement kind of gets built on what you agree on and go
Right.
from there, as opposed to where court, you're kind of focusing on what you disagree on.
Yeah, that's
So
a
I
great way
think
to put
it's
it.
just it's a more like positive approach to that as well.
So, how is this handling disputes without court?
So handling disputes without court. So when you're during your regular meetings that you're going to have where everyone's in attendance, emotions could run high. You could, start to get into arguments about things, but that's why the professionals are there. They're there to kind of keep you on track, remind you about what the actual important issues are, and to diffuse the tensions, and just keep the discussions productive. It's really about kind of toning it down and remembering about why you're really there. And so both legal and non-legal issues are considered, which you're not going to get with court. With court, they're really just focused on the legal issues. There's no emotion in it. You're not really getting to express how you feel. Um, and then with the collaborative process, because when those issues are raised or disputes are raised, you can then work through them together, and you're not having a judge or something tell you this is how it has to be.
Right.
You're able to kind of ease those emotional strains that come with such a high pressure, and also protect the children in this if there are children, because that's again one of the most important things that we're trying to do in this process. Um, because just because you're having these disputes and stuff doesn't mean that changes your common goal
Right.
at the end. So like the collaborative process really does help you stay focused. Like there will be disputes. It's inevitable. Like emotions are high, you're not going to agree on everything. But that's why it's great to have the team of professionals and support really guide you through those disputes in a positive way so that you can come out on the other end being happy with whatever the resolution may be.
Right. And yeah, I just add like that's what this collaborative process is, right? It's like a guided conversation to
Hmm.
make sure that everyone kind of maintains the roadmap and sticks on course, and that you're supported by, the people in your corner helping you come to an agreement. And I just add that, collaborative practice, disputes are expected. We're here for a reason, right? If you were able to do it on your own, you would be. So the difference is how we handle them. Instead of, retreating and separating in our separate corners, the team leads to problem solve. So, for example, if parents can't agree on a holiday schedule, instead of a judge imposing a standard rotation, we could explore more collaborative compromises, maybe alternating holidays or splitting the day if that works for the family. And it's the mindset of how can we get to where we need to get without escalating the situation.
Absolutely. Because like one of the core principles of the collaborative process is respect.
Right.
So, and that's really what encourages you to show kind of understanding and compassion and like cooperation so that
Absolutely.
you can build your settlement on those areas of agreement.
Yeah, absolutely. Mutual respect is one of the main principles. And you've touched on this before, and maybe I can kind of jump into confidentiality and how that's absolutely critical in this process. Um, and what's said in the process stays in the process, right? So that means people can brainstorm solutions without having fear of it being a formed idea that could then be used against them later in court, right? So there's um, a lot of appreciation and willingness to have an open dialogue, and it creates safety and honesty for discussion. So confidentiality is absolutely critical, and mutual respect, another foundation. So everyone agrees to treat each other respectfully, and that doesn't mean there won't be disagreements. There definitely will be, but you have lawyers and other people in your corner if needed, coaches and etc., to step in and kind of help with the tone and the conversation. And I've seen situations where, couples walk into meetings barely able to speak to one another, and when they walk through the process of very tough issues, it's possible that they're building actually more respect in that environment.
And that actually just reminds me of like a collaborative file I had years ago. At the beginning, the parties were maybe not so amicable, but by the end and the time the agreement was signed, they were going out to have lunch afterwards.
Wow.
Like, so it really can, you really got to
Actually
go in
helps
with
their
an open
relationship.
mind.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, like it really did help to strengthen it. So you really need to go in with kind of that open mind and
I'm
ability
sure
to
that's
kind of,
reassuring for people to hear too, right? Because you're in such like a conflicting time in your life, such a transitional time. Everything's changing. And to know that, this process of you two um, separating your lives can end with you guys actually maybe having a friendship out of it.
yeah, and
Or
being able to work better together and even co-parent better, like,
absolutely. Yeah. Have respect. And that's what's always going to be in the best interest of the children, right? To see mom and dad not fighting.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Which I guess leads us into when it might not be appropriate for all parties to use the collaborative process.
Yeah.
So I know, like, in my experience, if there's really high emotions and there is no way for the parties to come back for that, and they think that it might end up in court anyways, then it's not likely going to be a process that's going to work for you.
Okay.
And also some parties might their legal issues might be so quote unquote minor that it might not be worth engaging in the full process of getting the full professionals, and they can just negotiate and still not go to court.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. And I think like you said, right? It's just not suitable for every situation. And that's a conversation you can have once you've retained counsel as well and like have that conversation with them to see, am I able to do a collaborative process or is this likely going to go to court anyways? Um, I'd say if there's a history of abuse or a major power imbalance, um, or if it's just not safe or realistic, right? Like, so these are conversations to be had. Of course, it sounds like it's fantastic, but there are certain situations where it's not going to work. The process requires that both spouses can participate openly and honestly, and sometimes the situation is as such that it's not going to get there. Um, so if it also doesn't work if someone's isn't willing to disclose finances. So transparency, and you had touched on this already, Lisa, is absolutely a non-negotiable. So we can't have hidden assets. The trust is going to break down, right? It's all about open dialogue, so that needs to happen from the beginning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Another challenge is when one spouse is focused on winning or pushing the other side, right? So that kind of gets back to this power imbalance. It only works if both parties are committed to problem solving, even if it means compromising. So I think that, before you start this process, you kind of have to have a conversation with yourself and say, am I willing to kind of get into the nitty-gritty of everything that was our relationship and come up with an agreement that's going to work for both of us? And am I going to be willing to compromise on things that aren't my must-haves? Or, where am I willing to give and take? So that being said, even when it isn't appropriate, there's still out of court processes that you can use, like mediation or arbitration. The key is choosing the right process for you, right? And making sure it's the right process for your family.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now I guess that will lead us into we'll hear some happy, some success stories.
Yeah. I've seen it make a huge impact in people's life. One couple I worked with that was locked in a constant conflict over parenting. They were both loving parents, both communicate, but communication was pretty toxic. And through collaboration with the lawyers and a coach present, they were able to reframe the conversation, right? So it kind of gets back to the importance of having someone to guide those conversations with you, and make sure that it's focused on what the child's needs are. There's usually, there could be deceit or other things that are causing you to not have the most healthy relationship with your partner, but you still have to be parents together, right? So making sure that the conversation is still centered around what's in the children's best interest. And in that situation, they left with a schedule both of them could accept. And more importantly, like they could communicate better. Like you said, with that experience you had, Lisa, like sometimes it could actually better the relationship, right? Like it no longer is there a thought of reconciliation, but if there's children involved, you're still going to be in each other's life in some capacity. So doing so in a way that's respectful, in a way that can be used for the future to come, right? Something that's going to last. Um, I'll share too another example. is I had a couple that was quite scared of the finances and how could they afford two homes, right? Like you're separating everything now. And bringing in a financial specialist, we were able to create a realistic budget and help support a plan that gave them both financial stability. So it was a situation that caused a lot of anxiety, and they were able to come up with a financial plan that was going to help them in the future as they separated their finances. Um, the success story here isn't, what side gets more, but it's how the family moves forward. So when you hear about parents that, can retain, it could pardon me, can attend their child's recital together or graduation together without drama, like that's the real success story here.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. So
And that just made me think, mentioning all of the professionals here, I can see as someone who isn't familiar with the process might think that that means like a lot more dollar signs. The reality is actually usually quite the opposite because generally those family and financial professionals are going to have a lower rate than your lawyer.
right.
So if you consider like your lawyer preparing all of this work when you're in court and using the professionals, it does actually end up being more cost effective that way. Just wanted to touch on that.
Yeah, no, that's just it, right? The lawyers can focus on what's legal, and then you have coaches and professionals to help with everything else. So, in conversation about that team, how do you find a collaborative team?
So, well, the first thing you're probably going to do is pull up Google. Um,
Being
so,
realistic.
so there are you're gonna look for the listings of collaborative professionals in your area, and most areas have a collaborative practice. I want to say like association.
Right,
So for example, the Kawartha Lakes has the Kawartha Lakes Collaborative Process practice. Durham has one. Like all of the regions have their kind of own association.
right.
So when you're looking, you're going to look for the association that's in your region, and they list all of the professionals that are in there. So they're going to list because you got to remember, you're making sure that you need to find someone who is specifically trained in collaborative practice. Not all lawyers are. So if they're a member of these associations, it means that they are trained in this collaborative process and that you can reach out to them. So it'll list all the lawyers, the family and financial professionals, and then you can choose who you want to reach out to. Again, you might choose to reach out to a family professional first because your biggest issues are about parenting. And then when you meet with them, they could refer you to a collaboratively trained lawyer or vice versa, really.
hmm Yeah, I'd ask too, like I'd add, the first step is asking your family lawyer. And what we kind of touched on today is the collaborative process is something that, a lot of people don't know a lot about. So if you already have a family law lawyer, you can approach them. And if this is something that they're not yet trained in, they can recommend someone who is, right? It's not the end of the
Absolutely.
process. It's all about having those conversations to make sure that you find a team that's going to support you through this process.
100%. And there is lots of information out there.
Definitely. Yeah. And like you said, start with Google, but these associations are great. A lot of resources. And a lot of the time, too, there's some sort of like info account you can message with, and they can get resources to you as well.
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much for your time and sharing your knowledge with this presentation. I think it's been really helpful to the audience. We actually did have a couple of audience questions come in as well, so we do have some time, so we'll go through those. The first one is collaborative practice legit? I think that's a fair question. Is it legally binding? It's not,
Yeah.
you're not going to court, so is it legally binding?
That's such a fair question. And I think it, really touches on the fact that this is a process a lot of people don't know a lot of information about. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. In Ontario, collaborative process itself is private, but the outcomes of a formal separation agreement or a parenting plan is signed by both parties and is fully legit and legal. So once signed and witnessed, the agreement is legally binding under Ontario law. Sometimes couples choose to have their agreement filed with the court as a consent order, which makes it directly enforceable by a court. But even without that, it's still a binding contract. So people can be assured that it isn't just a feel-good conversation, that you actually are coming out of it with something with real legal effect.
Thank you, Anna. And you just touched on the next question, actually, which is not a lot of people do know about the collaborative process. Most people think if they need to get divorced, they need to go to court and there's no other option. So, this question, why don't more people know about it? Lisa, can you shed some light on this?
Honestly, I blame TV. Because a lot of people, that is why, like, they really only know about the court process, because of, what is available to them, like on TV and stuff, really only shows court. It doesn't show
Court
anything
makes better
else.
television.
But, right, who wants to see a show about people getting along and
Yeah.
so, but it also is kind of like relatively new-ish. Like I know the collaborative practice, not the Kawartha collaborative practice, they only association only became like opened, I would guess I would say, like around 2017. So it's really like it's still pretty newer, but it is expanding. Like it is getting more out there. More people are starting to use it. Even celebrities are using it now, like using this process now. So it is getting more out there. It's just I feel like there's not enough I guess advertising or public, knowledge about it, which is a problem, but it's coming. We're getting there.
Yeah, because it's not as exciting, right? But I think conversations like this are great because it offers like a really good introduction to the process, right? So whether it be from here, people doing their own research to see what their next steps can be, or going to one of those professionals already to, kind of reach out and start the process.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I believe that is all the audience questions that came in today. So thank you to our audience for tuning in to Family Law Now After Hours. After this session, a brief survey will appear in your browser. Please enter your comments and suggestions for future topics that you would like us to explore. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. You can book now, as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, if you're interested in a complimentary consultation with one of our team members, one of our lawyers. Please contact our intake team via email at intake@russellalexander.com and mention our after hours series to schedule your complimentary consultation. Registration is now open for our next after hours event, Is Mediation Right for Me? Which you will again see these familiar faces now, Anna and Lisa, back on the next week. So look forward to that and make sure you go register for that if you haven't already. You can just go to russellalexander.com/familylawnow to register for that. And thank you so much again to our panel for sharing your insights today. It has been extremely helpful and a pleasure to listen to you both. And thank you to our audience for tuning in to Family Law Now.
Thank you.
Thanks.